Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I was actually going to read a meditation today because I didn't do my Soulful Sundays yesterday. I got up, we were at brunch. I was getting ready to figure out what video I was going to do yesterday, like what meditation I was going to read, and so I could come home and film that. And I realized I never posted the video from the day before, so I missed a day. I apologize. So I didn't want to post 2 videos yesterday on here. Anyway, I was going to do a meditation today on vulnerability, which I think is really important to discuss. But as I was reading this meditation, you know, I was like sitting there and I was kind of like jotting some notes. I wanted to think about what I wanted to say and how it had applied to me in my life and things like that. A lot of times I get on here and I just read the meditation. Often, you know, I'll read it before and kind of think about what I want to say. So anyway, I put it down for a second and I was like going through my phone and I got this message from somebody on Instagram. And it said, I try to go through my social media at least once a day and like answer like 5 or 6 things from each because it just becomes a little overwhelming at times. And so anyway, I got this message from somebody and she was asking me to let her know which video on this channel I had talked about my mother guilt tripping me about not visiting her very often. And she was like, if you could direct me to which video that was, I'd really appreciate it because my mom is doing the same thing. And so I couldn't remember what video it was. I knew exactly what she was talking about, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. But I said to her, I said, I think this is actually a really good idea to kind of recap. So let me know what you'd like me to address in the video or whatever. And she responded and she said, my mom, she used the word smothers. She said, my mom smothers me and, you know, makes me feel bad about not being there or seeing her often. And then she went in and she said, my biological father is also an alcoholic and she has a lot of resentment about that. And I was like, okay, now like this is just taking another level, right? This is not just about mom smothering you. This is not, we're talking about a family, no matter if it's biological or not biological. We're talking about a family of addiction. We're talking about codependency. We're talking about chaos and toxicity. We're talking about, there's a lot that's going on there. And so I just thought I would get on here and offer some of my own personal experience. The story that she's talking about, and I want to share this, and then I want to go in there and talk about guilt, because I think guilt is absolutely one of the most wasteful, useless emotions that we can possibly have. I don't play into guilt at all, okay? One way to really lose me as a person in your life is to guilt trip me. It just really doesn't work. If you want to come to me and have a conversation about how I have affected you in some way or how you wish that I had been there for you at a time that I wasn't, I'm more than willing to have that conversation, own my part, try to improve myself as a person, and promise you that it won't happen in the future and do my best to do that. But guilt tripping does absolutely nothing for me. And I really think that it's because I grew up with a mother who thrived on guilt tripping people until this conversation that we had. So back in the day, after I got sober, after my mom got sober, so if you're not aware, my mom got sober 6 months after I did, and she passed away a month shy of having 13 years of sobriety. So we were both sober together the better part of, you know, 12, I was sober 13 years. She was sober 12 years and 11 months when she passed away. Actually 12 years, 11 months and 14 days, or 12 days. So, we have this relationship of recovery. But just because people are in recovery doesn't mean that they're fixed, okay? There's a lot of stuff that people have to work on there. And I don't want to give this like misconception on my channel that myself or anybody else that I know that's sober or working a recovery program is perfect by any means. There will always be things for me to work on, you know, for the rest of my life. There will be character defects that arise on a regular basis. There will be things I need to improve on. There will be, you know, behaviors that I need to take responsibility for. There will be amends that I need to make. And that is what life is, I think, at its core, is for us to continue to grow, remain teachable, and become better versions of ourselves on a daily basis. So do I have as much in my life today that I need to fix as I did 10 years ago? Absolutely not. But will I still, 5 years down the road, have some things that I need to figure out? Sure. Like, you know, and as we peel back the layers of the onion, which I like to talk about a lot in videos too, you know, more is revealed. Like, we find out more about ourselves. So at the time that I was getting my master's degree, I was working a full-time job, and I was in a full-time relationship. I mean, we lived together, and I also had a roommate that was my best friend at the time. So as you can imagine, 15 to 20 hours of, 20 hours. I was in a 15 hours, I was master's classes, and then I had a internship on the side that I think at that time was like 10 or 20 hours, and then I was working a 40 to 50 hour a week job, and then I had a relationship with somebody that I was living with, and then I had a best friend that I lived with, and I tried to go see my mom 2 or 3 times a week, right? Because she's alone, and she didn't have a lot of people other than people that she knew in recovery, and my aunt at that time. So I came over one day, and we were sitting around talking, and she said to me, you just don't ever come over very often anymore. And I called my mom every day, right? Like every day I would call her and just be like, I'm checking in, whatever. And she would say on the phone, I just don't feel like I get to see you very often anymore. I'm like, oh my God, she has no idea how busy I am. But the reality is my mom knew exactly how busy I was. Of all of the people in my life, probably my mom, who had worked full-time, who had been in a relationship, who had gotten her master's degree, several master's degrees, she knew more than anybody what I was going through, right? So you would think that she would be the most understanding. But I think the selfishness of what she needed in her life kicked in first. And so I was over here and she said, I just don't feel like I see you very often. You don't stop by very often. It makes me really sad. I wish we got to see each other more. And I'm like thinking to myself, God, I'm doing my best, I'm dancing as fast as I can. And I looked at her and I said, Mom, she said it, and then I kind of looked at her and I paused and I said, you know what, Mom? I go, I'm not responsible for your happiness. And she looked at me and she goes, and I was like, where did that come from, And I looked, and she looked at me and she goes, what did you just say? And I thought, oh, I'm gonna get talked to here, Because my mom and I always had that relationship where, you didn't talk down to her. That was the foundation of our relationship, even when she was using. And I said, I'm not responsible for your happiness. I'm sorry that I don't see you on a regular basis. I'm very busy. I'm doing the best that I can. But, I'm not responsible for you being a happy person on a daily basis. You are responsible for that. And I'll never forget her response. She looked at me and she goes, do you think I think you're responsible? She said something like, do you think I think you're responsible for that? And I go, yeah, I do. And she goes, oh no. She goes, I feel horrible. And we had this great conversation about it. And going forward, I was able to set limits and boundaries with her. Was it the last time that I ever heard her say to me, you never come over here, I never see you? No, she said it again in the future. But I think after it would come out of her mouth, she knew what that comment did to me, because a lot of times she'd apologize for it. She'd say, I never get to see you anymore. And then she'd say, something to the effect of, well, I'm really sorry that I said that. I know you're really busy, Peter. She understood. We needed to have a conversation about that. But even though my mom suffered from a lot of mental health issues, she also was rather sane on a daily basis. So I could have that conversation with her. She also was a compassionate, loving person. A lot of people that I've dealt with in my life, family and friends, lack that inability, okay? There's no empathy, there's no compassion on their end. So I could have had that same conversation with them and they'd say, well, you're my son. So yes, you are to some degree responsible for if I'm happy or not. I've told that story to people that have had similar conversations with their parents, having learned from what I've said, and they've said it went really bad, I think when you talk about having alcoholism in your family or addiction and you grow up, okay, having chaos, toxicity, or even just an absent parent, if you've never known that parent because they're gone, because they're out there drinking, starting new families, whatever they're doing, that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect you. It does. It affects all of us, having worked, for years and years and years, one of the biggest things that I have seen affect people is having, an absent mother or an absent father. And, especially when there's a grandparent that raises them instead. And it's like they always had this longing for something else that they didn't have, or they imagined it was supposed to be a certain way and it wasn't, And, I feel blessed that even though my parents were divorced, they were very involved in my life, both of them. So I don't know what that's like. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that sometimes, we have to develop our own family of, choice, not our family of origin. And it's hard. I think it's really, really hard when we see a picture of what we want. But I will tell you this. Don't ever get confused by when you see somebody else's family picture that you think it's better or worse than yours, because you don't know what happens behind the front door of that house. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times we compare our lives to other people. And I did a video on here not too long ago, I think sometime last week, about, we always lose by comparison. I can remember growing up, you know, and I had a very good friend of mine who, like, I would go over to their house all the time, and there was, like, kids running around and, you know, animals running around, and dad and mom were always there, and they were making dinner. And I found out years later that that was a pretty dysfunctional family. Like, there was some stuff going on there that, like, nobody was aware of. And for me, it just looked like this fun family, because if I wasn't there, I was at my mom's house, and it was just me and my mom, you know? And so it looked to me on the outside looking in like this perfect family. And what I found out later was I didn't want to be any part of that family than I would of my own family, you know? So I think that we constantly compare ourselves to other people. If you come from a family of addiction, and I say this time and time again, there are 12-step programs out there that can help you. There are support groups. Al-Anon, you know, and Al-Anon programs are 12-step programs for friends and family members of alcoholics and addicts. Since I've mentioned it the last time, I've had like 5 people reach out to me and say, can you help me find meetings in my area? And so I will tell you what I do, because I do it for them, so you can go do it for yourself, so I don't have to continue to do this for people. I don't mind doing it, but I can't do it for 50 people, you know? Just Google your city. So like for me, I would Google Al-Anon, A-L-A-N-O-N, Indianapolis, Indiana, and then it would come up with a number that you would contact. And then you call that number and you say, I think I need to attend an Al-Anon meeting. Is there somebody that you can connect me with? And they will have people that are in the program that are on a phone list to take your call, and they will talk to you. So when you call them, you're talking to somebody that has been through exactly what you're going through. They're not a professional. They're not an expert. They're just somebody that's gone through what you're going through, that wants to help you the way that people helped them. Any 12-step program is like that. Reach out and get some help. When we talk about having resentments and anger in relation to family members that had addiction issues, that is directly stuff that people work on in 12-step. As an alcoholic and addict, those are things I directly worked on, you know, in a 12-step program. There are great books out there that can help people, you know. Courage to Change is one of those great books out there. And, you know, The Language of Letting Go and Codependent No More are some of the most fantastic books. And, those books can help you and speak to you in a way that maybe you've never heard before. The other thing I will say is that, because this was referenced in the message, I get a lot of questions from people that will say, I'm going to see a counselor, I'm going to see a therapist or a life coach, and I'm just not getting what I need. And so I want to kind of throw this in at the tail end of this. If you're not getting what you need or the suggestions you need, give that highly trained individual the chance to help you. Tell them, I feel like I'm not getting exactly what I need. This is what I'm hoping to get. Allow them the chance to give you what you need. If you have that conversation with them and they still don't give you what you need, find that somebody else. Ask them for a referral. Say, I think I might be better matched with somebody else. Find a referral from somebody else. Find somebody else that you would find something from, or you would get the answers you need. You know, I think it's important when you go into any situation that you know what you're looking for. And you know, I talk a lot about being in marriage counseling. My number one thing when we went into marriage counseling was, I didn't care who we saw, but that person needed to understand a lot about recovery and be able to speak the language of recovery, because that is my language. And I didn't want to go in with somebody that had no clue about addiction and recovery. And I'm so thankful that our counselor does. He's amazing and he understands it. So, you know, he'll throw out to me like, you need to call your sponsor, or he'll say to me, you know, like, well, you know, what about this step or whatever. So there are a lot of things out there, but listen, most importantly, guilt, okay, is this absolutely worthless emotion that many of us feel on a regular basis. And I want to tell you what I think about, you know, guilt. I remember, and I've told this story on here too, or in my vlog or something, I don't know. But, you know, I remember years ago, like after I got sober, my mom would say things to me, and she would say, and she should have known better as an alcoholic in recovery, you know? She would say things to me about like, well, do you think that you were an alcoholic because of this? Like, it wouldn't be about the predisposition. It wouldn't be about the genetic coding. It would be like, do you think that you're an alcoholic because you saw me do this? Or do you think you're an alcoholic because you saw this? Or whatever, you know? And it was all related to her drinking and what I witnessed. And one day I said to her, I go, why are you asking me this? And I even like this revelation happened to me later, and like when I was in a family group. And she said to me, you know, I just think like maybe I had more of an impact on you. And I said, wait a second. If you think you are fully responsible for my alcoholism and my addiction, what that means is you are also responsible for my recovery, and you don't own that. I did the work with my higher power. That is not yours to take from me. The things that happened to my life happened for me for a reason. And she's like, you know, you're right. And she never brought it up again, you know. Guilt is this totally, when we feel guilty about shit, what does it achieve? What does it do? Take a look at what the issue is, okay? I feel guilty that I wasn't there for somebody, or I feel guilty that I wasn't a better friend, or I feel guilty about this, or I feel guilty about that. And it could be some really harsh shit, right? But break down what the guilt is really about. Own that piece of it, take responsibility for it, and try to change your life. Even if that isn't going to that person, sometimes that's not the right thing to do. You don't want to disturb that person's life, but you can look at that and say, you know what, like, I did the best that I could do. It's pointless for me to continue to feel guilty, and I'm going to move forward and try to do the best that I can. I think it's also important for us to communicate to people. You know, so if our parents are saying to us, we never see you, or if they're smothering us, say, what would it look like for you if it would be enough? If you could say, wow, I get to see, you know, Peter enough, what would that look like? Well, if I saw you, you know, at least once a day, well, that's not possible. So you're going to have to come down from that because I have to have a life too. That's not fair to me, you know? Okay, well, if I saw you twice a week, maybe you came over on Sundays for dinner and, you know, like, you know, I got to see you like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. We can try for that. Like, that's realistic, you know? But you got to have communications about what the relationship's supposed to look like. Everybody should be able to do that, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or a family relationship. If you try to have that conversation with the other person and they aren't willing to have it with you, you're probably not ever going to be able to have that conversation with them, and probably at that point you got to decide what boundaries and limits am I going to have. That doesn't mean they're not going to continue to say things to you that guilt trips you. You just have to change how you hear it when it enters your ears. So I hope that was helpful to anybody else that has gone through that like I have. And you know, remember that life is short. Be patient with the people that we love in our lives. Be patient with our parents and our family members and our friends. You never know when you meet somebody that day where they're at, what's happened to them, what thoughts they're going through, if they're sad that day, if they're happy. You never know when you meet somebody where they're at that day. So always be patient with them, but that doesn't mean that your life is less important than theirs. So be willing to set boundaries with the people in your life. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.